Good morning, everyone, and happy Saturday. How's everyone doing this morning?
Good
Good
morning. How are you
morning.
guys?
Awesome.
All right.
Good.
Nothing's keeping us down, not hurricanes, not glitches with Zooms, hence the different kind of impromptu background here for your host. But we're gonna roll and we're gonna have a good time and hopefully a lot of value being added here. So we're going to have Kathy on the docket that is going to talk about maybe you've heard this quote: "If you fail to plan, you plan to fail." And she's going to expand on that. Can't wait to hear from that. We're going to hear from Eileen. As some of you know from previous episodes, Bruce and Eileen were recently on a cruise, and she's going to give us the highlights of a page that we never have seen in the HealthPointe manual. I think it's somewhere page 127, something about eating ice cream and some sort of obtuse maintenance mode. So she's going to enrich our lives with some brilliant insights on that front. So we can't wait to hear from you on that, Eileen. And then I'm going to cover, admittedly, I'm going to say it was a bit of a despondent moment in my overall picture of American health that actually occurred yesterday. And I'm going to kind of talk through that a little bit and kind of what had me down and a bit despondent on that. But let's get cooking here, and we're going to turn it over to someone that I think is still on West Coast time. But if you're there, Eileen, tell us about that page that none of us have seen in the manual, page 127, 128 or something like that. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. So I pretty much hit my goal weight before, we've been traveling since July and get home for a day or two and go here. It's been crazy. And so we had this trip planned and we went out west and we did great when we stayed in an Airbnb. We were friends who really eat healthy. That was good. Blah, blah, blah. But then I was at my goal weight and I was going to just, I don't know what I was going to do, but I was going to do maintenance on the cruise. And first of all, I'd advise never do that. No, don't do that. I should have done week 6 because I could do week 6 and stay and keep writing everything down. But just deciding I'm going to go to maintenance, yeah. And I didn't even know how to do maintenance really. So I gained 10 pounds, 10 pounds. And I came home and I didn't add more food weeks because I'd already added way more food. I like dessert every day, twice a day. Hello, is that maintenance? I don't think so. So I was scared because that was my old way of being. And I'm like, am I losing it or what? But I just came home. I got on, I started a new cycle and I dropped off like 8 pounds. Just, it was probably a lot of water weight and stuff. Or so I'm right now, I'm up 4 pounds. So it's manageable and I haven't lost it and gone off the deep end. You just got to get back on track. And but I would never advise going off the deep end. It doesn't feel good. I got my heartburn back. Yeah. So that's my story. I guess I do plan ahead all the time, and we plan. And I thought I planned maintenance, but I didn't. I don't know. I just didn't know how to do it yet. I should have not done that on a cruise because it brought back all the old habits. Anyway, so I'm back. I'm home. We're not traveling for a while, and I'm so glad. We had a hurricane crew here, and I was doing protein days, and I just stuck to it. My girlfriend's like, "Well, I'm proud of you. Look, I'm like, yeah. Well, I've been eating for a week, so I can do my protein days, and everybody else was having healthy food because my friend Pam is here and she's on HealthPointe too. And by the way, Bruce is out west still helping his son. So I was being solo here with the hurricane. That was interesting. But anyway, I just wanted to share a real moment because I've done so well. And that was a failure for me. And I was trying not to beat myself up over it. And Carol helped me just get back on tracks. Don't do the old way. You have a new way. And that's what I'm doing. And I'm happy to be here with you guys.
And you're doing great, Eileen. And you know what? The most beautiful part about that whole thing is what you're learning from it, because as you're coaching other people, they will come into that same everything that you experience. Your folks will come into those kinds of circumstances, and then you can tell your story about, well, let me tell you what happened to me and what I did and what I did to come back successfully. And it's the old, when the wheel falls off the truck, you stop the truck, you get off, you put the wheel back on, and then you continue on. And so when your wheel fell off, you stopped the truck, you got home, you put the wheel back on, which is your protein days, and you're back. And I do have to say, in defense of Eileen, that when she left at her all-time low, her very rock bottom low. So when
What
she
was
says,
that amount?
however,
What was the amount that I'd lost, or?
no, what was the amount that you, well, either way, whatever you want to say.
Well, I can say what I weighed, but for most people my height, they don't think that's so low. I weighed 132.4. You know, I'm 5'1". Some people think they need to weigh 110. I don't need to. I've got a lot of muscle. I used to be a gymnast, so I've got a build that is not tiny. And I was happy with that weight. My doctor's happy with it. I was comfortable there. I'm not saying I might not get into the 120s later, but for now, I was going to be happy with that.
And sorry to interrupt on that, but just to kind of get, a framework on this, very important, I think, very real topic. And that's what I so love about our community here, is that we're not pontificating. I mean, yes, there is the HealthPointe program and so forth, but it meets reality. And I love keeping it real, but wrapping around that real, having some sense, to the degree that people are comfortable sharing what that real number is. So that equated to, or, either knowing what your starting weight was or what that total drop was.
Let me check real quick. Something like 75 or a little more.
Okay, 75. Yeah. So sorry, Carol, for that interruption on my part. But so you're 70. So you're saying she was her low. And for first time viewers, is that, 10 pounds, 20 pounds? It's over 70 pounds, 75 pounds. So
76.2.
Yep. And so Carol, now you're muted. So if you can, you're on mute.
I muted because I was going by some lawn work. I didn't want to interrupt Eileen.
Okay.
Okay. I think I'm okay. Sorry for the background noise if you hear it. Oh, you didn't interrupt me. That's exactly what I wanted Eileen to share, but I think I wanted her to share what she was willing to share. But like you said, in perspective, 75 pounds, are you kidding? 75 pounds on a person that's 5'2" or 5'3"
5'1"
is massive. Pardon?
5'1".
How much are you? 5'1".
And Carol, it's 76.2, not 75.
76. And you lost a person. You lost a person. And she looks so amazing. But Eileen has a tendency to want to do everything perfect, and she gets down on herself. And honestly, this is a tremendous learning experience. And I don't think even the best of us could go on maintenance for the first time ever, entering into maintenance on a cruise. I mean, come on, we're human beings.
That was dumb.
Well, it wasn't dumb, it was a learning experience.
Yeah.
So, anyway, so that's what it is. It's a learning experience. And you plan to succeed, but just realized that the week that you chose maintenance wasn't the correct week. And you'll learn more about maintenance now too, as you get through that last cycle and move into maintenance in a more controllable situation. So
yeah, absolutely. So let's learn from this. We talk about it. It's not, we throw out these phrases. It's not failure, it's learning. And so I love that we are learning from this. So what did we learn from this? Carol, you're mentioning, and Eileen, you're mentioning, hey, maybe if you're going on a cruise, adjust on whether you're into a week 6, let's say, versus a maintenance. Is that what I'm hearing is one takeaway?
Well,
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah. Well, I've done maybe 3 cruises since I've been on the plan, and I did week 6 on the other, much better, because you can have a roll if you want with dinner. And you feel, I wrote everything down. After I started doing this, I'm like, I'm not going to write this down. I can't even. So if I did week 6 and maybe I had 1 dessert, then that would have been more like maintenance. It would have been healthier. If I had at least been trying to do week 6, you get plenty of food, it's like more food than you can eat. So yeah, I would suggest that to anybody. Do week 6, so you can, if you like a roll with a dinner or something. Don't go
I
crazy.
think the other thing too, Eileen, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but as I'm recollecting back, I think you started out tracking your food intake, and then I think towards the end, when the ship got rocky and you had some inclement weather, you couldn't weigh yourself, because here's a couple that took the scale with them and weighed themselves every day. Now they couldn't weigh themselves, so there's accountability out the window, and that was something they couldn't control. And then not journaling everything that goes into your mouth. What was the little thing you said on one of your sheets when I said you're not journaling? What did you say? Do you
I don't
remember?
know. No, I don't.
You said something about, no, I'm not journaling. I'm just eating a little bit here and a little bit there. And I thought, well, there's a danger signal.
Yeah, well, that was in the beginning.
That was the beginning. Okay.
That was the beginning of the downfall. Yeah, but I'll have to say, Bruce journaled the entire time, I think, and he stayed on the program way better than me. He did awesome.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
so that, does anybody else have any questions, comments on kind of lessons from the reality, lessons from breaking away from the theory and living it? And by the way, I love the courage, not only to do the program, but then also to be transparent. That's great courage and great value. I have some additional thoughts, but I want to roundtable this. So anybody out there?
Yes.
Dave. Yeah, all right, David. I was just going to call you out because you've got another beautiful background, and I'm jealous, especially with my background, my non-background, my impromptu scrambling with tech background this morning. But David, with a wonderful background, what's your thoughts?
Again, congratulations, Eileen. And my message that I hear is the power of having a coach. It is so different in our program to have somebody that you're connected with to help you with the flashlight to stay on the trail, and to be able to gain 10 pounds and have somebody come back and say, hey, I love you, you're doing great. You just need to get back on the horse and help you, get back on track. And I had an interesting experience this week. I have somebody who's in their 3rd cycle, and they've now gotten very sloppy. And I'll just leave it at that. It's the information that I get back. And so anyways, I met with them. And one of the questions I asked them was, why did we begin HealthPointe? And the frustration with her is that she's lost 9 pounds over 2 cycles. And she felt that it hasn't really been all that successful. And I asked her, why did you begin HealthPointe? And she said, to lose weight. And I paused and I said, think again. Why did you start HealthPointe? And then she paused and she said, so I don't have to go on medication. And so her doctor had given her a script for medication. And I said, why don't we hold off on the script? Let's do 3 months of HealthPointe. Get your body healthy, taking the XX and the omegas and the probiotic and being on HealthPointe. And then seeing if 3-4 months later, when you have your blood work, if you're in a much better place. And so she had shifted her thinking of losing weight versus trying to get healthy. and it's an inside job. And so anyways, it was just, again, the power of having a coach, someone who's outside of you. We all need a coach. You know, the best baseball player needs someone to look at them while they're swinging the bat. The golfer needs someone to look at them while they're swinging the club. And so one of the powers of our program, and there are many, is having the power of having a coach who loves you and cares about you and is striving to help you to achieve your personal best.
Beautiful. Well said. Thank you. I'm going to add something. It's interesting as I'm doing this. I was going to say that lifetime maintenance can be tricky. Okay. We talk about sometimes where, you know, what part of the program is not tricky? What part of the program is intuitive to virtually everyone that is learning the HealthPointe program and they're into a 6-week cycle? You know what part is not difficult to understand? The 4 weeks, right? Everybody's like, yep, kind of makes sense. Little nuance here or there, but that resonates with me. Maybe the jumpstart days, that is not so clear to them. Definitely week 5 and week 6 gets a little tricky and definitely not intuitive and undervalued. I'll say that too. I've had multiple people that undervalued the power of week 5 and week 6 and therefore did not lean into it and do it. And then they saw why it was so important. When did they see it when it was important? Day 1 of their next cycle, week 1 of their next cycle. Now that it's kind of the wake up call. So anyhow, usually the second time around, kind of like that's, you know, freshman, you really don't know. Sophomore, you're a little bit more prepped. You know where your locker's at. You know how to go around. And then they get that. But lifetime maintenance can be tricky, undervalued. And because I just got a message from someone, Julie, who is on our call, that just messaged me that her microphone is out and said that this is totally her lane. I'm going to give another thing under the context of, you know, we quote unquote don't fail, we learn. All right, let's live that. If we're saying that, what did we learn? I'll tell you something. I was transparent with Julian that I was kind of failing some people early on, and I learned, and we applied it with her. So Julie, and I'll share this a bit, Julie, I think with your permission, because you wish that your microphone was working, but basically she was in a window of maintenance mode with the intention of going back into another cycle. And she had a kind of a similar experience to you, Eileen, in terms of the results under her maintenance mode. Okay, now what I heard you say, Eileen, for this reason or that reason, you weren't sharing your check-in number with your coach. Okay, and I don't know the situation, so I'm not judging why that was. Sound like something with some rough weather on the ship or something like that. But I believe that is, if we're looking to learn from this, it's always to check in. You know, in the HealthPointe program, they talk about in the lifetime maintenance, that's a 3 to 9 month process to make the change. But here's where I took it to another level with Julie. Because one thing that I love about Julie is she's gone through her cycles of the 6-week cycles, and she's had phenomenal, weight loss, reversal of A1C numbers and type 2 diabetes, etc. Is her check-ins are like a highlight to my morning because they are robust. They're a story. We're Emily and I are friends with Julie and Bruce, and I love them. But is that sustainable? Is that a friction point for not a lifetime, but a lifetime maintenance check-in? And here's what I learned. I had someone else, and more than one, but just one that stands out in mind, that was on the program, was doing quite well, also did really, really verbose, multiple paragraph check-ins along with the numbers and everything else. And I thoroughly enjoyed it and selfishly indulged in that dialogue. And then suddenly she started waning and then she dropped off. And I couldn't understand it because this person had all the reasons in the world. She was very clear, to your point, David, on her why. And I knew her to just be stronger than most in terms of her discipline. And it was a bit of a mystery. Nothing from my doing. To her solo credit, she raised her hand again and came back and wanted to start again, which we did. And one thing that I didn't notice until it ran for a while is her check-in was strictly her weight number, her WWW number. That's it. Almost, occasionally she would say this or that, or occasionally I would do something that, and I would just give a brief response. And to this day, she's been fanatically consistent with that. What's the difference? If somebody enjoys and can sustain a long, verbose check-in, great. But if there's even a slight risk of that, and us fully understanding the power of staying connected to that lifeline, that check-in process, strip your check-in down to just that WW number or something, whatever your coach suggests. But waking up, emptying your bladder, as we say, wake, we weigh, and just texting over that number is sustainable. So what I suggested to Julie is, again, love her. Selfishly, I want her to continue with her storied check-ins because I truly love hearing them. But that's being selfish. What's more important is her health goals. And under maintenance, she wasn't checking in. Why? A lot of different reasons, but I believe in what we're experimenting with is underlying it, along with all these other family obligations and situations like that. It was probably pretty difficult to think up what her check-in paragraph is going to be to Eric every morning. So we said, when we restart, let's just strip it down to just your WWW number, and move from there. So in terms of we don't fail, we learn from things and we just improve and get better. I would say add that as a suggestion. Again, work with your coach on the details on that. But with Julie and I learned from one of my other clients that was the key learning point there is if we're asking people to check in, let's make it as sustainable as possible. And then we can expect for somebody to continue with 3 to 9 months as the HealthPointe program states. That's my thoughts on that. Anybody else?
Can you hear me, Eric?
Yes.
Okay. I wasn't sure if I was still muted or what. I totally agree with you. I think it's the KISS method. Keep it simple. One of the things on HealthPointe, and even especially the beginning of maintenance, I'd say the first month or two, because you are making choices. And so now you're kind of out there in the wilderness. You're in the lane, but your lane's gotten bigger. So your choices have gotten bigger. So I encourage people to continue journaling because, as Jim Dornan always said, and we journal in our business all the time, what gets journaled gets done. Or what gets recognized, journal gets recognized, what gets recognized gets done. So I would say that if they're journaling anyway, which I like to see, there's no need for a paragraph or a dissertation or a theme paper or any of that. It's just the day before sheet of how many steps did I do, how much water did I drink, and what did I eat? And that keeps you in that realm of consciousness. And if that is happening with that person, sometimes it's easy to just throw that because it's all there anyway. Screenshot, well, for you, hi, for you, you do more tech. I do more screenshots and send them over. If you're doing that, throw a screenshot over. Or if you're doing it digitally, throw a screenshot of the digital. And so sometimes you're this way, like you're saying, Eric, and to your point, you're not spending time with a dissertation and a blah, blah, blah. All you're doing is sending a screenshot of what you did yesterday. And so that's another thought. Again, check with your coach, because we all have a little different ways of approaching things, but that could be a one-step process, just like what you're saying, Eric. But when you're doing the screenshot, it's a little bit of back-ended stuff. So if they did shoot up, you can kind of take a look at it real quick. So that's just another thought. But I do agree with you keeping it simple, because people won't do it long term if it's too much work and too much time consumed. So back to you.
No, great point. I guess, yeah, so the key takeaway on this is if we, learn from lessons, or if Eileen is learning from the lessons of the cruise, is especially if it's those early innings of maintenance, lifetime maintenance mode, whatever mode, be it taking a picture, taking a screenshot, or just doing a WW number, maintain at all costs your hand on that lifeline that's been thrown. I use that metaphor, where that's been the case. Because here's what I wonder, and I don't want to delve too far into the nuances here, just for because I so appreciate the transparency, and I don't want to overindulge in somebody's transparency. But I wonder if Eileen, in whatever circumstances were present, so I understand there to be a gap in the check-in with you, Carol. And let me just assume that is what I understood correctly from Eileen. Yeah. And then the next thing, it was 10 pounds up. I wonder what that would have been if the check-in, the strip downs, pared down, whatever mode it was, but maintained the check-in, when it got to 2 pounds, 3 pounds, probably a little bit of something from you. But at 4 or 5 pounds, 6 pounds, I wonder what would have occurred then versus 10. Now, let me point out about the 10, something that I want to make sure everybody caught there. Eileen is down 8 pounds. This is what I heard her say. And Eileen, I don't know if you're still on here. So guys, clearly when you're talking, there can be a sodium impact. I think it was David Dorman that talked about having some sort of like blowout birthday festival once, and the next day he was up some like 19, I mean, it wasn't 19 pounds, but it was something like that was physically impossible.
Dinner.
Yeah, the Mexican dinner. And he's like, oh my gosh, what's happening to me? And he was, but yeah, that's all water weight. We've all experienced it to one degree or another. A couple of, fortunately in our toolbox, we know, and if you're freaked out about that, again, you ask your coach, so quickly let you know how to correct course on that. It's very easy, but boom, Eileen's goes from 10 to really only 2 up is what I understand, which is well within range. So let's make a note of that. But yeah, it's, I guess, what we don't want to have happen is somebody go into maintenance mode, let go of that rope that's been thrown to them because it's, for whatever reason, too cumbersome or whatever, and they get into the dangerous waters, which is 15 pounds, 20 pounds, 25 pounds. Maybe they've lost 100 pounds and now they're back up 15 or 20 pounds. That's not all water weight. That is now a struggle. So we want to nip that in the bud and catch that within that 2, 3, 4 pounds and correct course until our hypothalamus and our biochemistry and our mindset and everything can totally wrap around, like we use a thermostat metaphor, and where it's really difficult to get off of that new healthy weight. Well, that was a fun segment. Thank you, Eileen, as always, coming to us with such great fodder for the rest of us to weigh in on. Great content. Thank you very much, and continued success. You're back right on track. Kathy, if you're still there, I'd love to go to you.
I am here.
All right. Talk to us about planning and failing to plan.
Okay, so I had listened to an audio this week because we're in an audio listening challenge, and one of the comments was planning to fail is failing to plan. And it sounds simple, like when you say, oh, fail and plan. Yeah, okay, yeah, that makes sense. But like, really, what does that mean? I mean, it's deep if you stop and think about it. And again, one thing I love about all of our Network 21 audios is you can take it in pretty much any context of your life. And I was looking at it more in a goal setting business mind frame when I was listening to it. But then I was talking with Jamika yesterday, and I was like, maybe, yeah, this is definitely HealthPointe, And so I thought, well, where in HealthPointe could I help somebody in this community in stating that powerful quote? And it was funny because I thought about Eileen and, how she, not too long ago shared with us how she preps all her food. And that just like blew me away. I'm like, oh my God, she's so amazing to take all that time and get everything prepped. But she makes sense because even though I saw it, I still haven't done it. And every night when I come home from work, I chop everything up and I make my salad every night. It's like, okay, if I just did this once, like Eileen does, my life would be so much easier. So just kind of thought about it in that respect. So for HealthPointe, food prep is really key because the more simple you can make it for yourself, the easier it is if you're a busy working person, like 90% of us are. You have everything ready to go. So that's planning, So in that respect, and then thinking about the Atomic Habits book by James Clear, I think we really should start calling it the HealthPointe Bible, because there's just so much in there that you can learn that definitely helps with HealthPointe, and again, with life in general. But if you have a water bottle you're going to take to work, have it out the night before, packing your lunch, making sure you have enough of your snacks for the day. If you're not going to be at home, which most of us don't have the luxury to do that, to be at home. So making sure that, you have, if you're going to take cheese sticks and stuff, you have a cooler so that it's cold and you have a cold source to keep it in. We have our awesome bars, cutting them up into little pieces. So it makes it easier to quickly snack if you're in the middle of meetings or something like that. So again, that's planning, So, and now with what you were just talking about, Eric, with talking about the check-in and stuff, up front with your person before you start on your HealthPointe journey, discussing how your check-ins are going to be, how it can be simple, what we expect. And as being their coach and their mentor, this is what I'm going to do for you, and this in turn is what you're going to need to do for me. And we need to do this every day, again, it's planning. So I don't think there's one step of this process of the whole HealthPointe journey that there isn't planning involved. And I think a lot of times with people that I've coached that have fallen off the wayside, it goes back to the failure to plan. It really does.
Yeah. So like every day, the mental gymnastics, the cognitive load, the discipline that it takes to follow through on the HealthPointe program is very arduous, because they have to think through, oh my gosh, where's my supplements? I got no plan. They're not planned out. Oh my gosh, what am I going to have for breakfast? Or what am I going to have for lunch? Or gee, I didn't plan it. So how am I going to get my movement in today? How am I going to get my steps? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying, and even, to the very beginning stage of read the manual. You know, the manual has so much information in it, you know, and it's there, it's in the app. So you have access to it. It's not that you don't have access to it. And if, you know, if somebody, you know, way back when it was just a paper manual, oh, I forgot my manual, I have my manual. Okay, now you don't have that excuse because it's on your phone. So it should be pretty easy to be able to read it ahead of time to make sure that you understand the entire program, and meet with your coach before you start and question whatever you question, so you don't find yourself on page 127 later, you know. I mean,
we've highlighted the page 127. Everybody's going to be
right,
searching for that right now.
Exactly. You know,
something that I want to point out on, and then anybody else that has some commentary on Kathy's very important, you know, quote that we've all heard it, right? But I love that Kathy is unpacking. But one point I'll make about that is distinguishing between something that is like chronic failure to plan versus occasional, or what I call an anomaly, because we all have to have some grace with ourselves and with others in a 365-day year with this, that, and the other thing happening, all except for Kathy, who still maintained 10,000 steps somehow for over 2 or 3 years.
2.5 years tomorrow.
2.5 years tomorrow. All right. So talk about, she's well suited to be talking on this. But for the rest of us mortals, you know, we have those interruptions that can make the planning a little bit disruptive. But before anybody thinks that this is like a hall pass, or Erica is saying, or anybody is saying, oh, then that is why I can just sloth around on that. No, it should be like maybe a day, you know, where like, oh man, you know, unexpected company came in and, you know, are visiting with us, and it kind of disrupted my morning or something like that. And so it can kind of rock, you know, you didn't plan for that. You didn't know what was going to happen, you know. And so you have those anomalies, have a little grace on that, but make the distinction then, is it an anomaly or is this chronic? Are you, be honest with yourself, be intellectually honest and say, am I chronically not planning? Have I ever set up my week's worth of food? Have I ever mapped out what I'm going to do when I travel to that destination? I'm going to be there for 4 days. Have I made kind of a plan for how we're going to get our 10,000 steps in? Or do I just say, well, my life was disrupted. I traveled and to this city and I didn't know where I could go walk. I think giving a little bit of a leeway on a day-to-day failure to plan is just life. We all experience that. But then if it's chronic, week after week, then that's something that you have to take a good look and then say, hey, I think I could do better if I actually plan. Any other thoughts on that topic?
You know, I think that that really rings true, Eric and Kathy. And this is a great topic to kind of step back. If you've ever mentored or coached somebody on HealthPointe, I'm guilty many times of putting a person on HealthPointe. I get excited to get their kid, blah, blah, blah. They place their order. But I fail to take that time for really, really explaining what prep is to them and to walk them through it and instruct them. Because we think, oh, they're just going to go and they're going to prep. Well, they're coming from a blank canvas. They have no clue, you know, how this program works. And so we think that they do, when in fact we need to step back and say, hey, let's talk about prep. Pull out one of the prep audios. I think Sean Henderson, if I'm not mistaken, don't quote me on that, but one of them is on preparation and preparation and maintenance, I think. But anyway, I think just spending that time, first of all, us as coaches should go through and read the preparation and think about, what did we do to prepare? What do people that are successful on the program do? Give them some hints to say, hey, go on out and get some little small containers and, fill them up. What kind of food are you buying in preparation? What kind of food do you like? Talk about it with them and make this an instructional process in the very, very, very beginning before they even start the program. Because what is prep? Preparation is the days before you actually start. And so I think for myself, I certainly have not done a good enough job in that area, because when you do that, then they are prepped better and they have more of a tendency not to fall off the wagon, or, like you said, Eric, occasionally, but in the back of their mind, they know what they have to do. They can visualize it. They've already done most of it in their home. They just need to go back and remind themselves, or as a coach, you can remind them. So I think
Prepping with the tools too. I mean, again, we're drinking our own Kool-Aid around here. How many people can relate to, maybe you all are different, but who had a food scale before HealthPointe?
Right.
Not me. I think I did. It was like from the I think it was bought at a garage sale from the 1940s or something, right? It was like this spring-loaded, bouncy thing where you put something on there and it's somewhere between 12 ounces and 473 ounces. It's, highly accurate, right? It's this boingy, boingy thing.
put your baby on it and then you put your food on it.
That's right. I mean, who has I'm sure there's some of you perfect people out there that have these wonderful food scales, or maybe you're a chef on the side or something like that. But for the rest of us, for 10, 20 bucks or whatever it is on Amazon, you can get these beautiful digital food scales. And guess what? If you don't use if that's not part of your prep, if you haven't read through the manual where it says get a food scale, or if your coach hasn't kind of helped you, as Carol is saying, like, help you, do solid prep, you launch into 6 weeks and you're like, I don't know what's happening here. Well, the difference between 4 ounces of protein and 7 ounces of protein is a dramatic difference in your results. But when you're just throwing it in your bowl or on your plate, visually, it's not much. And if you're using one of those 1943 springy food scales like I had, that's not helping you either. So you got to prep with some of those tools. You've got to get a pill box, a Monday through Sunday, if in most people's case, so you can load that up. So there's some of these tools and technologies that can help you too. But yeah, this prep or failing to prep is a big one. I'm going to roll into my segment because I'm going to try to. Last week we ran a bit long.
Eric.
Yes, Hank.
Do you mind if I butt in for a short bit here?
I'd love you to.
Okay. Because my engineer brain always says, give me a formula to work with, right? Okay. And where am I on my weight versus my BMI, body mass index? All right. And I just throw this out there real quick, and you don't have to write it down. We'll send them out. But BMI is very important to follow, as most of you know. And you probably say, okay, how do I figure my BMI? It's not that difficult. All you have to do is to take your height in inches. Okay, I'm going to use Eileen, for example, because she gave her numbers. She's 5'1". That means 61 inches, right? And you've got to square that. In other words, 61 times 61. Then you divide your body weight. Again, she said 132. You divide that by 61 times 61. It comes down to a very tiny figure. Then you multiply that by 703. And they'll give you your BMI. And the ranges are, you're underweight if your BMI ends up at 18.5 or lower. You're in a healthy weight if your BMI is between 18.5 and 24.9. And I figured out for Eileen, she is at 24.9. Okay, so still with the healthy weight. And the overweight, then you start to become over 25 to 29.9, and obese is over 30. So just those. And remember, we keep talking about this new product, Ignite, because another good predictor of good health is your waist circumference. And Ignite helps you bring that circumference down. And that's why we said Ignite should be part of this HealthPointe program, because helps brings those down, the waist, the hips, and all that. So just rough ideas there. I want to throw that out, and I hope it helped.
It definitely does. So yes, BMI, body mass index, and congratulations, Eileen, on being in that healthy range. And yeah, thanks for breaking that down for us, Hank, on that, on doing the calculation on how to do that. Of course, you can probably Google it as well, but knowing what your BMI is really great, a great reference point as well, Hank, as what you're saying as far as just the simple number of your waist size. Similar to BMI, for men, a certain waist size, and women, a certain waist size, is a easy indicator and a very important one, because that's kind of your visceral, more dangerous fat that would manifest in that area.
And that's what Ignite works on, the visceral fat.
Yes, it does. Yeah. Yeah. And they've got a wonderful bunch of studies, documented studies on that product, which they almost always do. But that one is, I remember when Sharon Webb went through that, I think you guys were hosting a educational program on that, and she went through those studies that were published on the XS Ignite product and the impact on BMI and waist size and visceral fat and so forth. Powerful stuff, and quite delicious. Little pixie stick.
I love it.
It's really great. Had mine this morning along with the Begin product. I want to be just like Hank, have my morning routine. So no, thank you, Hank. Thank you for inserting that very valuable portion in. And I'll wrap with this. And as we were kind of teeing up the program, I kind of headlined it by saying that yesterday I had an experience which had me, I was mentioning this to Emily because I wasn't sure how I could kind of frame some of this and whether it would be of value to share, but it's kind of despondent. And I'll tell you why. I had the pleasure, I was happy to help of taking someone that has to go routinely down to Ann Arbor for kind of a chronic condition that needs help on a routine basis, and I was happy to do so. But getting down to Ann Arbor to the U of M hospital, which I've been to before, but this procedure takes a good amount of hours, so it wasn't something where I could just drop the person off and come back later. Really, it just made sense to kind of hang around for, I didn't know if it was going to be 2 hours or 4 hours or what. It ended up being, I think, over 4 hours before he came out and we headed back. But the point of that is I was immersed in that setting. And Kathy, maybe you can relate to this as well. Of course, I'm looking at it through the lens of what we do, what we live. And I'm in that setting, and it's just, you are affronted with the chronic disease epidemic that we have in America. And it was very front and center. And what I mean by that is, there are medical systems that are dealing with acute situations. In fact, the American healthcare system originally, it was relatively recent history before the American health system got involved in treating chronic conditions. They were more acute situations. You know, somebody, I didn't, at least in this section of the hospital, I wasn't seeing people that had lacerations or broken legs or head trauma or something like that, where obviously we're forever grateful for these amazing health facilities to help with that. And we're appreciative of them even for the chronic. But when you're in that setting like I was for 2, 3, 4, 5 hours, and you see individual after individual that is coming in there, that those of us that are in this realm of HealthPointe, you look and you just see where when we hear the numbers of, what is it, 88% of Americans are metabolically sick, and you're literally looking at 8, 9 out of 10 people that are going by you, or in many cases being wheeled by you, that are clearly metabolically sick. And the fact of the matter is that what correlates with metabolic, being unhealthy metabolically, is often obesity. Clear, this isn't fat shaming. This is drawing the correlation that's stated between obesity and its correlation with insulin resistance, which is a driver of type 2 diabetes, and a whole list of very cruel and chronic diseases. And I'm in that setting and I'm seeing this. Secondly, I'm seeing the staff of this hospital that's providing care for these chronically sick, and they themselves look chronically sick. And so, and then I look at this unbelievably opulent, beautiful, and again, we're grateful that this isn't some tent that's set up in a field to treat these people. This is a beautiful facility, but the money that that place is cranking to equip a facility with that type of opulence and artwork and environment, and again, it's a very beautiful setting and it's geared to do that. I'm not debating that or even faulting it. I'm just acknowledging the economic power of that system. And then as you follow the money, you realize that then layered on top of this is a payment system that is at best opaque, meaning for if I was to take those same 8 or 9 out of 10 people that are coming out of there and ask them, how much did it cost you for what you just had done to you? How many of them would be able to give me that number? Versus if I ask them or myself, how much did I pay for my last vehicle that I bought? I bet you most of us could throw that number out real quick. Or how much does a house cost? Or how much did your last addition or home improvement project that you have done? Why? Because you're writing the check. But in this opaque system where you go in, it's covered by insurance or it's covered by a state program or a federal program or something, and there's this enormous sum of money that's being paid in many cases, and it's very opaque. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, that's where I was kind of just, you know, feeling a little bit, you know, weak in my knees, like, what is this Goliath that we are up against? We've got a tsunami of people that are chronically diseased. We've got a system that has a vested interest. This isn't my words. This is the words of others on many panels, which I'll reference. But they talk about, from a pure economics, their economic incentive is not to, their economic incentive, and it sounds very cruel, is to keep you sick, but don't let you die. Brutal. Not saying that that's the intention of the individual, it's just these panels are pointing out a system that benefits most by having year after year after year, decade after decade of chronic disease management, but not solving it. And then how is it all being paid for? That's all very opaque. And what are we up against? Interesting enough, just to kind of switch gears into a little bit of hope in the area that I wouldn't normally go to for help, and that is the government. Some of you might be aware, if you're not, there was a Senate roundtable meeting in DC that was on Monday, the 23rd, that was a culmination of what many of us, particularly those who are active in HealthPointe, would be already privy to. And this was Senate testimony by Dr. Casey Means, by Callie Means, by other notable figures. We've mentioned Dr. Chris Palmer from Harvard, list after list after list. This entire Senate roundtable was over 3 hours, which I have not viewed the whole thing. I've summarized it. I know many of the players in there. I know of the senator that was heading it up. But what they are working to do is to overhaul this system of incentives and processed food manufacturing that is leading to these types of outcomes of chronic disease over the past 30, 40 years. To give you an idea of the scale of the escalation, one of the most powerful testimonies that was there was by a young lady. Her name is Grace, who is as sharp as a tack, 18-year-old. Her story is at 18, diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. How many kids do you see getting colon cancer now compared to 20, 30 years ago? She's survived. She's used it as a platform for her why. She's turned her pain to purpose. And she is a powerhouse on what is happening to the Gen Zs and the millennials and their epidemic of obesity and chronic illness that they're suffering from that never used to happen. So I'm hopeful from this context. There have been situations in the past in American history where the government played a role. And for those like myself that don't run to the government for our solutions, I will give credit where credit's due, but with some caveats. Let's take a look at smoking. Okay. Smoking was first given the Surgeon General's label of the dangers to your health when? In 1964. Now, it took a ton of years, decades, before it became policy and federal and then state laws. But I was reminded that Emily and I went to dinner last night. We took her parents, my in-laws, out for dinner at this particular restaurant that's next door to where we live. And I can remember, we all can probably remember when you used to walk into a restaurant and they would have a smoking and a non-smoking section. Crazy as that, right? You would be like, well, where's your table for non-smoking? It's right here. And then like 3 feet away is a smoking, right? It's laughable. But when did that law change in Michigan? 2010. So from 1964 to 2010, yes, a long time, but we can now walk into that restaurant as we did last night and have it be pure non-smoking. We can get on a plane, another laughable thing where people would smoke on planes. And we can get on, it could be smoke-free. So there are changes that can come and become codified and put into law. Another one would be the seatbelt law. That was technology that was known in the 1950s. And it wasn't until 1985 in the state of Michigan where it became a secondary offense law, which means that if you weren't wearing your seatbelt, you couldn't be pulled over for that. But if you were pulled over for something else and you weren't wearing your seatbelt, then they could cite you for the seatbelt. But it didn't become a primary law to wear your seatbelt until many years later. But it is a law. No smoking in these public places is a law. So change can happen. And I believe, and I'm a bit hopeful, when you have powerhouses like Cali Means. Anybody watch that guy? That guy is throwing punches left and right. And he does not hold back. And he's got the credentials and the chops to back it up. So I think it's going to be more and more faster than it did for seatbelts, than it did for smoking. That said, I'm not waiting on that. I'm just hopeful. I'm just coming out of that despair of being in that U of M hospital setting, just looking at the chronic illness, the obesity around, and coming out of that despair with another watershed moment this week on Monday with that Senate roundtable. And then I'm most hopeful, as seemingly insignificant as it can seem at times, with HealthPointe, where we focus on one person at a time. And I reflect on the meetings that I've had this week, where, to quote David Dassow, often bringing us this reminder of the starfish story of picking up the starfish amongst thousands of starfish and throwing it back into the water after a storm, and it making a difference for that starfish. And so for each meeting that I have, and I've got another meeting today with another starfish who I might not be able to overhaul the entire healthcare system in Ann Arbor or any place, but I can do my best to help that person that is in the meeting, in the Zoom meeting today. So that's one thing that gives me hope out of this despair, is that even if you're just affecting one person, and all of us know this, all of us that have known, I mean, Hank and Carol and Bruce and Eileen, to know the trajectory, the change in Bruce and Eileen's, okay? Myself, we mentioned Julie earlier, to know that Julie is now equipped to be better in her health. That one person, it's so rewarding. But then there's one other thing that we often cite, and that's what we call the VV factor, the visual and viral. I know that with that one meeting today, that there's a possibility when they reach 5, 10, arguably 20 pounds down, it shows in their face and people start asking them what's going on. And then it's viral. It's something that is easy and fun to say, hey, it's a HealthPointe program. They talk about it. And even though it's that one starfish that you throw back into the ocean, you don't know what the ripple effect is. You don't know, will that lead, in the case of HealthPointe, one person could literally be hundreds, literally could be thousands in time. And for those that use this to build business, that's where we're going with it. So that's why we fan the flames of referrals. We work to add value to people and help them get healthy, yes, for their own sake, but from a business perspective, you have a big business unit when you've got one that becomes 500, that becomes 3,000. And health and good health is very visual and very viral. So don't despair. I'm out of my despair. I had a brief moment there yesterday, I'm not going to lie, where I was just enveloped in what seemed like an overwhelming, awful situation of the state of American health and the American health system and the money to be made behind chronic sickness. And but I'm rebounded quickly, and we're back on a roll with hopes of some overhaul for the American system as it relates to healthcare, and maybe more importantly, just what each of us can do as individuals, helping one person at a time. So any thoughts on that before we wrap up and scoot on with our Saturdays?
Well, I'd like to put a tremendous positive spin on this, Eric, and what you said is very mind-boggling, but I think it's something that in the back of our minds, we know is coming. And the beautiful thing that we have is it is visual and viral, and we have technology on our side. And so when Philip Morris and Reynolds Tobacco bought out food companies many years ago, we didn't know about this for a long time. It was kept secret. But today, when you speak out, it goes very, very quickly throughout the whole world. And so the messages that Callie and Casey and RFK Jr. and all of the others are putting out are spreading very quickly. And people are seeing very, very obviously, like you did at U of M. And so I think that the message is going to get out there much, much faster. And I think it was one of the audios that you sent us, that Tucker Carlson one, where Casey said we could turn this thing around. Well, she said in weeks or months, but be that maybe not. But I think it can be done in a lot quicker way just because of the technology we have today. So thanks for that
Sure.
input. That's excellent. Absolutely excellent.
Absolutely. Well, guys, thanks for suffering. Those were the early on in the program. Thanks for suffering through some technical glitches. We'll be here next week, same time, same place. I'll get this up to the Voices of HealthPointe YouTube channel. And till then, we'll say bye-bye.
Bye.
go.
Take
Bye. Have a
care.
great week.
Bye, everybody. Have a nice weekend.
Bye, everybody.